Hello and welcome to YHTV's nominated show, Magical Medical Tour. This is episode 102. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Christina Suzama, and with me is our wonderful medical guide, Dr. Glenn Woolman. Greetings, Dr. Woolman.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to Magical Medical Tour. I'm Dr. Glenn Woolman. I'll be your host along with Christina today as we travel through another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy in search of optimal health. Exciting day today, Christina.
Oh, yes. Every day is exciting. I mean, there's something shifting in the air right now that is just making things move quickly.
We're going to be speaking with Anatara today, and all of you that watch this show and are familiar with Yoga Hub know that Anatara has been part of the virtual conferences. She has her own show, Flowing into Awareness. So many things that we're going to be talking about today, but today we're focusing on her aspects of intuition and healing. And in past episodes with Dr. Deidre Manns, episode 55, we spoke about her healing from a cancer, and we learned from her as a doctor of physical therapy and a Pilates instructor and the director of Monarch Wellness Group what was important in healing. And for her, it had to do with knowledge and support groups. We also talked with Lon Winston, the artistic director of Thunder River Theater Company, in episode 35. He's also an actor, a playwright, and a director. He had many bouts with cancer, and he taught us about the possibilities of healing with knowledge and with support groups and with humor. And today we're going to be talking with Anatara about healing and intuition, not only from the point of view of what is intuition and understanding it, but also how she used it in her own healing. But before we do that, Christina?
Yes, well, anytime during this show, whether if you're watching it online, just feel free to ask a question or make a comment simply by scrolling down on your screen, and make sure you click submit. We will make sure that your question or comment is shared with our guest or Dr. Woolman. And if you're listening to this on a podcast, which many of you do now, give us a call at 818-LETS-TALK, 818-LETS-TALK. And again, we will relay your message and get back to you if you leave us your contact information. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, you're welcome, Christina. And I just want to encourage people to get in touch with us. We're always interested in what you're thinking about and your comments for our shows and how we can make them more interesting and enlightening for you. So today we're going to be speaking with Anatara. She's a life awareness counselor and a master intuitive. And I would like to just start immediately by saying hello, Anatara.
Hello, Glenn.
Hi,
nice to see you today. Hi.
Yay!
Yeah, this is like the whole group here.
Yeah, I know. Now she's crested almost every show. Or the original shows.
Really?
Yay. Congratulations, Anatara.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's so good. Anatara, as the medical guide, I usually like to tell our listeners and viewers the path that I hope we venture on today, knowing that it may go off in different directions, and I have no control. But I want to start a little bit learning about you, although everybody can go to all your other shows and learn about you. But then I want to talk about intuition itself and how that works in healing. And then we want to get into an episode that you had where you became fairly sick and needed to go through a healing process and how you went about that. We're always trying to give our listeners ways to help healing. And many times it's about going to the right healer. But also there are things that people can do for themselves, and that's what we want to touch on today. And at the end, I want you to offer us a little course, Intuition 100.
Not 102?
Not 102 yet. That's watching flowing into awareness. But just a little bit of ideas of how people can start to improve their own intuition or learn what they need to use it as an aspect of each person's healthcare plan. How does that sound to you, Anatara?
It sounds wonderful, Glenn. Just wonderful.
Excellent. So let's start with your beginnings. And I want to talk about the influences from your parents and where you lived and what got you into healing, being a healer.
Okay. I would first say that I think I was always a healer and always believed that I could heal. I could heal myself. I watched it happen when I was a child, but we'll get into that later.
Okay.
My influences, my parents were both born in rural southern Ontario, farming country. One was the son of a barber. One was the son of the daughter of just a regular farmer who believed very strongly in human nature and in the power of the people, let's say. He was instrumental in the very, very beginning of what we call in Canada the National Democratic Party. It's the party that believes in listening to one another, to cooperating and to creating politics and making political decisions that matter for the people.
Mm.
So that I know has been very instrumental, and I used to listen to him as a tiny child. He actually scared me because he was so tall and so big, and his voice was so deep. But I could see in my mother how that mattered, how it really mattered that we would all work together to treat each other equally, and that definitely flowed over into the way I looked at myself and who I wanted to be. My mother was put through medical school during World War II in 2.5 years, graduated as a tiny, tiny woman at the age of 22 and a half, and went right into being a full-on physician. My father was an engineer. They moved from Southern Ontario to Boston, my father to teach at MIT, my mother to work with doctors and in psychiatry and neurology at Harvard. So I was always close to the medical profession. I grew up playing in hospitals. The nurses and the staff and even the hairdressers, they were people that looked after my sisters and I when my mother went to work. And we were always taken into the hospital rooms of some of her neurological patients, some people with MS and other sort of brain difficulties. She took us there to meet them, to see them, to bring them light, to bring them, a sense of there is something bubbly out there in the world. And when people now say, "Oh, I just hate hospitals," I say, "I love hospitals."
Mm.
When I have to go to a hospital now, I feel myself as part of the essence of what keeps it flowing and what keeps it moving. And I also think that as a child, as I saw these patients and I saw the structure of the hospital, I could feel what the staff were feeling. I could feel what they needed. I could feel what the patients needed, and I could see where the gaps were. And I actually had conversations with my mother when I was quite young about what I was seeing. So I think that's where some of the intuition started. So I grew up in Massachusetts, a very beautiful, beautiful state, actually in Concord, Mass, only a mile away from Walden Pond, where Henry David Thoreau lived. So my playground was Walden Pond, and the
Not too shabby.
not too shabby at all, and the beauty of life in at that time rural New England. But I was also connected to all of the intellectual stimulation of being around Cambridge, around Harvard, around some of the other places that exist and still do exist in Massachusetts. And I felt that there was a part of me that was invited to speak and invited to come out. And in the private schools that I went to, which were not colloquial schools, there was such a combination of very deep learning with integrity and with the outlook that each individual student counted and they mattered. So I really feel that framed the way I look at things. So there's one other thing that's very important about my upbringing. My mother, being a doctor in the late 40s, early 50s, was quite concerned about polio. No one was sure that the polio vaccine would work when it did come out, and so she was looking for a place for my sisters and I to spend the summers that was far, far away from any of the debris of germs, and I say germs in quotes. So my parents bought a very small island in northern Ontario in Georgian Bay, which is an offshoot. It's a smaller lake on Lake Huron, where they could take us and we would sit on this island and not be exposed to anything. So I grew up 3 months of every summer for my whole childhood, right up until I was 20, sitting on this beautiful island, playing in pristine water that I still drink, living outside in the sun with the animals, with the birds, with the mosquitoes, and being there for that length of time every year of my life showed me how integral every system of the earth is, compared to and in combination with humans, with human life. And I learned there to be in an open and meditative and intuitive state just simply by being there. So those are some of the early influences for me. Later on in life, I attended a college called Friends World College, in which you go to different centers, to different places around the world, and you create your own learning experience. So one of my first experience was to go and assist with some medical friends of my mother's at the University of Nevada, who were leading and teaching a course for pre-med, pre-nursing, all forms of medical assistance careers, teaching them how to listen to people, how to listen to themselves first, how to listen to people, and then we actually went into a community and created a local medical, sort of medical place where people could come for services. So I assisted with that course when I was only 17 and really came to understand what happens when people need something, what happens when people feel sick, and what happens as they try to integrate with the systems that already exist. And the next most important, what we used to call them projects at Friends World College, was that I went to India and I lived there for 2 years, watching what people did when they were ill, watching what people did when they were sick. So I looked at Ayurveda, I looked at the local Indian shamans, I looked at snake worship, I looked at all of the traditional and non-traditional ways that people looked and worked with and functioned with their own illness and the people that they felt would help them. I learned a lot about faith healing, about faith in one's own religion, to and how that can be integrated into healing. So I learned an awful lot then as well about yoga and about meditation. So I think that sort of summarizes the main influences that have brought me to where I am.
It certainly does, and it gives us a very nice picture of that. I'm picturing you. I don't know if I should be saying this on the air. I guess we can edit this out. I'm picturing you naked on the island.
Always.
Purely as an innocent child developing in nature.
Exactly. That's exactly how I grew up.
Oh, that's great. So now you've had all these influences, and then now you have to make a choice as to what you want to be when you grow up. And you become a life awareness counselor and a master intuitive. Give us a little bit of how that actually came into being, what you did for that.
Sure. Well, I always thought that I was going to be a doctor, as you did. Please excuse that sound. So I realized in talking to my mother that it was very hard to be a woman and to have children and to fit into the medical profession. That no one had ever taught her how to be a professional and to have a family as well. So I started to shy away from that, knowing that I felt that healing was really important, knowing that I knew that I could heal. And I could interpret and intuit what people needed for their own healing. I didn't at that time. It's very interesting how this works. I didn't know about naturopathy or homeopathy. It hadn't crossed my scan yet. I hadn't seen it, so I didn't jump into that, which I think I probably would have. So instead, I did what felt right next, which was to start to work with people with special needs. And I don't know what the term these days is to be most respectful about that. But I started to work in big institutions where there were people with emotional, mental, physical needs that they couldn't be at home, couldn't live on their own. And I quickly discovered that the part of my heart that opened to I suppose it was a form of empathy, but it was deeper than that. I could get right inside the hearts of anyone who couldn't communicate and couldn't speak or show me what they needed and what they wanted. So I did that for a number of years. Then I had 2 children, and then went back into doing that as well as doing what we call home care or home support. So for many, many years, I worked in home support with essentially mostly elderly people who I found the same thing with. I related to them on a cellular, energetics way about what was happening inside them. I could listen to their voice and know where the pain was. And that sort of thing started to happen to me. And then eventually, when I took a course to become a Bach flower remedy counselor and started to work with the Bach flower remedies, the woman who taught the course, who at that time was working in New York City with the Ministry of Angels, kept mentioning angels, angelic communication, speaking with the angels. And I thought, oh, that's just like the best Christmas present I could possibly imagine. So I asked her about it, and she explained that she spoke with people's angels, with guardian angels, with the angels and the guardians of the earth, with devas, with fairies, with whatever being of that sort there was, and received information for people. So I went to one of her courses, which synchronistically was happening the next weekend. And as soon as I asked a question and opened to the possibility that there was an answer there for me, I was flooded with reams of words, with information, and with sensations that accompanied it. From that point on, I started to listen to the angels, and they instructed me how to start to hear information for my family, then for friends, then to turn it into to an actual career. And from there, it just goes on and on and on.
I want to talk. I have so many questions right now, obviously, but I want to try and stay on my own path here. Let's start talking about intuition itself. Give us a definition or a description.
Okay, and I think I'll probably come at this from different directions.
Sure.
And I want you to know that as I am describing how I see intuition, I am not thinking about this. I'm going to let flow through whatever comes through intuitively in the moment for me to say or
Excellent.
to describe. So for me, intuition is a heartfelt thing. It is the truth. Literally, it is the truth about everything as we are able to interpret it and feel it as it comes through our heart centers. When we have an intuitive thought or an intuitive hunch, we may not know that it has entered our cognizance or our awareness through our hearts, but I want to emphasize that it has. So I've said a couple things. It's heartfelt communication, and it is truth. The language of intuition is not one that the mind creates. It's not one that has any sort of concrete word description or definition. It is how we find ourselves knowing from the deepest center of ourselves, which is connected to and inseparable from the center of all that is. However one wants to look at that. It could be the center of your god or goddess. It could be the center of the universe. It could be the earth that's bringing in intuitive information. But it is always about your truth. The truth of being and the truth of absolute and unquenchable, undeniable love. Does that help, Glenn?
It does. And of course, it brings up more questions. I need to know, there are many people that I've worked with emotionally, physically, psychologically, that hear voices and are hearing people tell them things. And many of these people are being placed on medications because they're hearing voices. What's the difference between someone who's schizophrenic hearing voices and someone like yourself who is here? Are you hearing voices or feeling voices? How do we know the difference there?
Okay, it's an excellent question. And I know that sometimes when people start to work with intuition, and I know we'll continue the conversation about this too, but as people start to ask for intuitive information, the sense of it arriving can often be quite scary. And since schizophrenia is something that we all are apprehensive about, it's no wonder that it's a scary thing. It's unusual. We don't know anything about it. If we were taught as children to believe in that inspiration that comes through us in many different ways, we would not be afraid of it as we are sometimes now. Okay, so is it voices? I don't hear voices per se. I all of a sudden know something. If I'm looking at a person who's in pain, emotional or physical, and I hear something from them, I am receiving a knowing. My intuition is bringing that to me in the form of just, aha, I see that in you now. I understand that. It's a knowing. I can ask when I speak to the angels and I ask for specific information. I hear them also as a knowing, but I sense their presence as one would when one is in a state of complete and utter bliss from meditation or from something else that makes one blissful. When I ask specifically for information about another individual, I sometimes hear the tenor or the tone of their voice or their mood, but it's not the same as hearing voices per se. From what I understand from speaking with people who are schizophrenic, much of the time the information is brilliant and the understanding is brilliant on certain levels, but it's not generally something or always something that feels loving or that makes them feel at one with whatever that voice is delivering. And I would say that when one is truly working with their intuition, there's a complete safety in it. There's a sense that there's nothing malevolent that could happen through that voice or because of the voice of the information, however that is. One more thing about intuition. We can receive intuition in myriad ways. It can come through the voice of a friend. It can come through a newspaper that flashes by and gives us information. It can come because a dog comes up to us and wags its tail and looks up at us eagerly. Intuition is not limited in any way as to how it can be delivered. And each of us has our own form of receiving it. And that's the primary thing that I like to focus on with people when I'm teaching them how to receive information through their intuitions.
We're going to be getting into you teaching us a little bit about intuition, but you mentioned children. When we're born, do we all have intuition?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Yes, we come here with it. It is one of the primary, most beautiful things that we as humans actually come here with. Into these physical bodies.
So what do we do as parents and as teachers to recognize that in children and have them not fear it?
Beautiful, beautiful question. The one of the most important things is to always listen, to truly, openly, with enthusiasm and consideration and respect, listen to what the children are saying to us. Even if it feels like a fantasy to us, does that really matter? Does it matter if something that could be their intuition speaking to them from other realms and from the realm around us? Does it matter if it seems fantastical to us? No, it doesn't matter at all. What matters is that the child feels that they can explain what they're seeing, explain what they're feeling, and explain what they're believing, irregardless of what the subject is. And that we will take that information and either say, that's really interesting, can you tell me more? Or say, is this what it's like for you? Rather than shutting them down and trying to put some sort of strange external configuration on what it is that they're trying to tell us. If we allow them to be open, if we allow them to flow with what's flowing for them, then they won't become shut down. If we can sometimes stop the dialogue that we have with kids and let the moment be as well, you'll see that kids are receiving all the time from places that we as adults don't often even acknowledge anymore.
Do you think we shut that down?
I think that we're taught to shut it down.
Mhm.
I think that there isn't enough of an offering from much of the school systems, from much of the adult dialogue, from a great part of traditional religion. I believe that there isn't enough of an invitation to keep that flowing.
Do you think there should be a balance? I always look at combinatorial medicine, and I think that people should have intuition, but people should also have an understanding of the science of life also. Do you see it as a balance?
Yeah, I see that a balance is very helpful, and I also see that each and every one of us is on us. We're flowing, sort of through that balance, through that scale of being more intuitive or more scientific, let's say, or more mental. And I have to tell you that I love my scientific mind. My scientific mind is a prized possession. I love the way it can take the facts that I learned in science and at school, the facts that I observe, and work with them through my intuition. So my intuitive mind informs my scientific mind informs my intuitive mind. And I really feel that most of the time I am maybe not a perfect balance, but I'm always in some sort of vortex or spiral where both are functioning.
As they should, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift gears for a few minutes, because we're not really going to leave intuition and healing, but I want to talk about an episode that you had. More than how you treat other people, I want to talk about how you treat yourself. So I see you down in Mexico. I see you having a great time swimming with the tortoises and going out fishing and looking at all the ruins and just having a great time. Partly with Christina, I think you were there, right?
We were.
Oh, yes, we were. And we actually did a few shows for Flowing into Awareness right there on the beach, right, Anatara?
We did. It was fun.
Yeah. And you had no idea at the time that you were going to be sick later on, or did you?
No, I didn't. No, I did not.
Okay, so you finish your trip and you go home. You return to life in Canada, right?
Correct. Salt Spring Island.
And so, what happened? What was your first indication that something was wrong?
Okay, I'm going to just go back just a hair to the coming out of Mexico.
Quite honestly, she did not want to come back. That's my intuitive sense. The body, the cellular body just went, I don't think so. That's reality there. I don't think so.
So that's what this is all about.
It's so interesting, because that was a very large part of the way I first looked at my illness, and I'll get to that in a minute. So you've heard about my past. You've heard that I spent 3 months every year on an island in the middle of nowhere, swimming naked as a child, naked as an adult sometimes, but at one with the elements all the time. In Mexico, I was able to live the life of what I call my mermaid self. I'm a Pisces. I'm a water being. It's everything for me is about water, and so
flow.
And flow. Absolutely. Thank you. And so I was in Mexico for a month. I swam probably 6 hours a day. I was in the water even more than that, snorkeling, floating, diving, just living in the sunshine and the surf and the water. Nothing could be better for me. So when I left Mexico, I was in my peak physical form as well as my peak emotional and I would say intuitive form. Everything was flowing perfectly. I remember feeling it's too bad that this time is ending. This is the life that I want for myself as much as possible. But I don't remember having any real apprehension about going home. Because I felt so good. And I came home and had a very, very productive first week. I worked with clients. I had new insights. I had new ways of speaking to them. I was able to dive right into my practice with new enthusiasm and new energy, really. So a week after being home, after having this very, very productive week, I woke up one morning with abdominal pain that I don't even know how to describe. My abdomen was distended from my sternum right to my groin. It was different than being pregnant. It wasn't this lovely round being happening inside of me. It was some sort of menacing painful, gurgling mass. That's the best way that I have to describe it. And I was immediately rendered by these sensations inert. I couldn't eat. I drank only for about 10 days, couldn't eat anything. And I started to look at, what I was going to do to heal myself. And it's funny, in that sort of physical distress, intuition it took on a different form for me. It wasn't like I had a broken arm or a broken leg and I could be just focused on that. This pain and this thing inside me, which I did accept as being part of me at the time, it was almost as if it was eating me from the inside out. It was destroying things and breaking things down from the inside out. I want to say that I was never frightened by the experience. I wasn't afraid for my life. I felt that I was being shown a different part of what physicalness can feel like, and that it was eventually going to give me things. It was going to give me insight. It was going to give me knowledge, and it was going to show me different elements of who I am.
So before we go further, for just 1 second, in a sense, what we do in the emergency department is triage. We determine who is most critically ill, who has a life-threatening or limb or sight-threatening problem, and we react on that. What I'm getting from you right now is, from your intuition, you did a triage that said, yes, something is bad, but it's not life-threatening, and you went on from there. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. But I did immediately start to do some things to find out what was going on. Some scientific, but perhaps on the left side of science, scientific things to discover what it was.
Okay.
So I didn't immediately, although my whole family said, you have to go to the doctor right now. And I just knew that was not what I was going to do. I believed completely that I could go to the doctor and likely be diagnosed and likely be, assisted in my healing. But that wasn't what I felt inside that I was going to do or was to do. I have a friend and a healer in Ontario who does long distance energy healing, and I have to admit that I can't remember the name of what it is that she does, because I have felt it so thoroughly for the last 2 years, and know that whenever anything comes up for me, that she can diagnose things and then change the energy of it. The way she describes what she does, and we'll just keep this brief. The way she describes what she does is that she identifies what it is that is causing distress and provides a frequency that renders it incapable of being there any longer. So it is actually scientific, it is actually energetic, but it's not something that is mainstream in North America, from what I understand.
And she did this long distance rather than hands-on, so to speak.
Okay. She has a photograph of me. She has a hair sample, and she puts that on her machine to do the diagnosis and the treatment. Okay. So I phoned her that morning when I was so sick, and I was crying, and I said, I've never felt anything like this. You are the person that I believe in that will and can lead me through this. And so she immediately went to work. She worked with me for 6 weeks on a daily basis. It was a phenomenal experience and journey for her, as well as she expresses it.
By phone? Was it by phone, or was it by Skype, or was it just through intuition and energetics?
She would use her energetic diagnostic machine, and she would find out what was going on, and then we emailed back and forth. Okay. All I could do was to lie in bed and look at my phone and send emails. Okay. Even talking in this illness that I had, it was so debilitating I couldn't think. Okay. I had no energy. So that's why I explained that in the beginning how energetic and full of life I was to come to this place where I was physically completely undone. So she discovered that I had some parasites, and that they had infiltrated all sorts of different parts of my body, and we just kept at it. Every day it becoming a little bit better, every day the pain becoming a little bit less and less, and every day her discovering some other organ or part of my body which had been infiltrated by the parasites, and eventually completely eliminating them from my systems and from my body. there was this is an interesting one interesting thing that I don't think you and I have discussed, Glenn. At one point, after not eating for 8 or 9 days, I found that, and I kept thinking to myself, I wonder if this is a brain effect of starvation, literally. But I found that as I opened my eyes and looked at anything, I could see right through all of the functional form and material integrity of everything around me, right out into what I would call the cosmos. I could see the stars and the planets and everything else. It was as if the physical part of my anatomy that usually sees things had also been dissolved. So I felt in many ways at that point that I had come back to source, literally come back to source, the great void, the place where all creative energy comes from. I really felt like I had met that and was that again. Do you have any other questions before I sort of continue with how the illness was resolved?
I do, actually.
Okay.
So this healer in Ontario, you actually sent her a specimen of your hair?
Many years ago.
Oh, okay, many years ago. And you mentioned that she puts it in a machine to do a diagnosis. Now, this is a scientific machine that she has.
Yes.
So that machine diagnoses your hair at this present day, which you had given her years ago.
Yes.
So the cellular transference is there.
It's an energetic cellular transference. The cellular elements in the hair identify me, and then the energetic long distance connection can identify what's actually going on for me right now.
Oh, very cool. I want to know what this machine is.
I sent you the information this week too, and I just honestly can't remember what it's called. It's well known in Europe, apparently.
I'm on it.
But she works with it intuitively. So she'll get a little bit of the scientific information, and then she'll see how it plays out with what she is feeling and sensing about me.
Great. Ooh.
Okay, so we continued this way, and when I started to be able to literally to get out of bed, and at that point I was getting out of bed only to go to the washroom and to try to have a bath every day, and to get up and have a bath and go to the washroom would take me 2 or 3 hours because the pain was so intense and because I was becoming so weak. And I remember standing up and thinking, this is the most interesting sensation that I have ever had. I cannot remember ever having experienced anything like this before in my life. And watching it that way, I was doing it more through a state of curiosity than a fear for my well-being, because I could feel that things were shifting, and I knew that I really believed that it wasn't my time to not be here any longer. And I remember one morning I woke up and I heard some music somewhere in the house, and I started to sing. Like a few notes came out of my mouth, and I said, "Oh, there's a good sign. I'm coming back." So I got up out of bed eventually. Perhaps after about 10 days, I tried to go up the stairs, and I had no muscle left. My body was completely I was almost invisible physically. I'd lost 10 pounds. I only weigh 108 pounds to start with. The muscle was gone. My legs didn't know what to do to hold me up, to get me up the stairs. I think it was probably more just the bone structure that did it, and my determination. So I just progressed. Every day I got stronger. Every day I was able to eat something else. Every day I was able to have a mind that would work more clearly with my intuition. And go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think a key point in what you're bringing up right now is that you approach this not in fear. And
Correct.
I think that, and most people, when they have something wrong with them, they go to a fear state. Mm-hmm. And probably that adds to the whole process. Sometimes it brings them to the right people who can help. But it sounds like just by not being in a fear state was part of the healing also.
I agree with you 100%, Glenn, and I really appreciate your pointing that out, because I haven't heard that verbalized yet. Hadn't actually verbalized that for myself. I knew from inside myself, because I feel like I know myself pretty well in most ways, that it was all going to be okay. That I was going to be brought through this. I was going to flow through this to see what was there when it was complete.
I want to make sure. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say that one of the things that was there when it was complete was that I had been cleaned out. everything was cleaned out. I think that any storage points of pesticides, poisons, illness, viral and bacterial things, funguses that this method also clears, it was all gone. I could. It was a chance to reinitialize my physical self.
Did you? I always talk about combinatorial medicine. So right now you've gone with the intuitive and you've gone through this energetic healing. Did you do anything from a scientific point of view that your mother would be proud of?
Actually, by the time she left this earth, she was thinking more the way I am. She was the one who taught me not to believe everything the doctors say and to always look around the back corner and see what's there. Okay. Yes, I did. Eventually, at about the 10 or 12 day point, my family couldn't take it anymore and couldn't feel the improvements I was feeling. And they said to me, you absolutely have to go to see the doctor. And I was actually postponing it purposefully because I didn't want to have to gear myself into the whatever they might want me to do if I didn't agree with it. I wasn't believing that it was going to be bad, but I wanted to be able to say no if I didn't want it. So I did go to the hospital. They did an ultrasound and they found 2 or 3 masses in my lower abdomen, which to them, at my age, at 60, made them think, oh, it could be ovarian cancer, and it's probably more likely a ruptured appendix. But they didn't know that I really did understand what kind of pain I'd had. So from that, I had an emergency CT scan in which they found the masses, and thought, well, it doesn't look like anything. It doesn't look like your appendix ruptured. It doesn't look like it was. It's definitely not anything going on with your ovary. So we'll just wait a little while. And my regular doctor was away, and the locum didn't catch at that point that perhaps with those masses there and them calling them abscesses, that I should be placed on antibiotics, which was something I really didn't want because I know how disruptive that is to the inner flora in my gut whenever I have to take them. So since he missed it, I didn't have to take anything at that point, and I didn't ask for it. Not feeling at that point that I wasn't threatened, and knowing that my healer was also working on those masses. So I went back a week later to have another CT scan done, and the size of the masses, the abscesses, was down to 25% of what it had been. It had been reduced by 75%. So the doctors looked at me and they said, "You're a miracle. How is this possible? These things are gone." And they of course didn't know what I was doing, but they said, "We don't want to do any harm, so we're not going to try to drain them for you." At that point, though, they did keep me in hospital overnight one night to receive intravenous antibiotics, which perhaps did help with the final 25% of them disappearing, but also really disrupted my gut and put me back into more severe pain than I had been having. So I knew that I was being well taken care of and well inspected, so to say, by the medical profession. And that did make me feel safe, even though I didn't feel it was necessary.
Did we ever make a diagnosis, an official diagnosis? You had one from your healer in Ontario with the protozoans or the parasites.
Yeah, the tapeworm and protozoa.
Tapeworm, amoebiasis, or protozoa. Mm-hmm. Did we ever make an official diagnosis? Did you get stool samples or anything like that?
And that was so fascinating. No, the initial doctor visit, I said, shouldn't we do a stool sample? And he said, well, it'll take us 13 days to get that back. We're not going to bother with that right now. Maybe later. I'd rather do the ultrasound and see what's going on.
Okay. So where are you now in your healing process?
I am vibrant, and every cell feels alive. I am my normal bubbly effervescent self. I am eating everything that I want to, whatever I want to. I've gained weight, and I'm now just bringing back the muscle mass.
So will you, at the end of this, let's assume that no other symptoms occur. Is there any possibility you will go back for another CT scan or an ultrasound, or will you ever get a stool sample to make the official diagnosis?
I am not planning on it. I have been offered another CT scan if I wanted it, but they all believe it's not necessary. So I kind of doubt that I will.
Okay, what would change your mind?
Curiosity.
Okay, so that's interesting for me. Yes.
I threw that one out there for you, Glenn.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I love curiosity, especially in medicine. I think it's always good to know things. I would love to see if a stool sample now, even now that we have 12 or 13 days, not to worry, because part of my concern is that we have a tentatively unofficial diagnosis of the tapeworm and things like that, and I know that there are specific treatments for the tapeworms and specific treatments for the protozoan, not necessarily antibiotics. So I would be curious as to what might happen as we follow along as Anatara continues to flow.
Well, I am willing to consider this just because it would be interesting. It's
Yeah.
and it's not because I'm fearful of it in any way. It would be quite interesting. When I lived in India and when I came back from India, I did take a lot of different medications for different parasites, and I remember how horrible they made me feel. So that's a part of my reluctance. But I'll just add to this that it's the feeling that I have in my body that things have been almost reamed out and cleansed and reset in a way that makes me feel that I don't need to do that, but I'm not adverse to it, so maybe I'll do it.
We can. I think we could talk about this for a while, but I did promise our audience that we will have a little course on intuition itself. Before I do that, I want to ask you the question of, when you're interpreting and evaluating your own intuition, and then you go into abnormal states of health, how are you sure that the intuition is working correctly or not correctly?
And you were referencing that in terms of my health,
yeah,
or
you were,
in general?
For example, you were not eating. You were very weak. You were not getting a lot of nutrition at that time. Your brain was going into various states, and somewhere in between your heart and mind. And I know that, interestingly, in a lot of the Asian cultures, in language, they use the same word for heart and mind. So probably in your heart mind, something was going on. And how do you know at that point that you're doing okay and that you're not interpreting something that's not as beneficial for you as it could be in other circumstances?
Sure. My first answer is going to be silly, because I will just say I intuitively know. but that,
there you go.
That's because of the level of the communication that I have with my intuition, and the depth of how I know that I receive information, and this has proven to me that even a very extreme physical and mind state does not separate me from my connectedness with my intuition, and therefore the connectedness with all that is. So that is something very poignant that I have, that I have proven. I don't know why I needed to prove it, but but maybe I did. Maybe that is going to be something that will assist me when I'm working with other people to do the same thing. So how do I know? I just had a sense. I just knew. I never felt, as I said, I didn't feel threatened. I could see, and I knew that I was coming back. I could see the signs even physically in myself that I was coming back, and that I was able to eat more and more. So I knew I wasn't going to starve.
Right.
And I could feel the physical changes that were signaling to me that I was improving. So that there's the practical with the intuitive knowing that I am okay, that I am going to be okay.
Okay, so here we go. All of our listeners are anxiously waiting to become intuitive as you are. So what would be the process that an adult or a young person at this point listening to this show suddenly gets interested in becoming a master intuitive, or just becoming intuitive for themselves?
Sure.
What are the first few steps that one should take?
The very first and most important thing is to trust. And I'll show how that develops. So you trust and you believe, even though you don't necessarily have to firmly believe it. You have an open mind. That's what the trust is about. You have an open mind that says there's this whole realm of information available to me that I don't always hear from. So you put yourself in an aspect of listening to everything that's around you. So what I'd like to do in the beginning with people right now is to have them close their eyes and to take a few very, very deep and slow, beautiful breaths, breaths that aren't forced, breaths that are not controlled, and to be aware of where the breath flows into them and how the breath flows out. And when they're in this state of just being with the breath, not worrying about what the mind is doing, because it doesn't matter. Let the mind have its own chatter and have its own thoughts. But when you're in this state of starting with the breath, and this works beautifully with children, have them tell you and listen yourself to what you actually hear. What are you hearing? So identify the things that your ears hear. And then ask yourself, what is my skin hearing? And I like to use the word hearing instead of feeling, because hearing implies that openness, that willingness to be listening. So what is your skin hearing? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it that there's a denseness to your right and an openness to your left? What's your skin hearing? And then start to look inside to, what is my body hearing? What is my body feeling, sensing, knowing? And I've sort of given the first course in this one little bit of a beginning. If we are busy in our heads all the time, or we're busy looking at things, electronic devices, TV, even reading books, we are not present for all of the things that are available to us. And intuition eventually can come to us from all sorts of signals and sources, but it starts by coming to us through the senses and through the body. When you feel like you're sort of playing with that, and it's not a mystery to you, because the more we do it, the more we get from it. If we very casually just say, okay, what am I hearing? Oh, body, what are you hearing? What are you sensing? It'll be fun, perhaps, but it's not going to be, there's not going to be enough of it happen so that communication really, really starts to happen. So the next stage of this is to put yourself in that state of mind that I just described, and to literally pose a question to what you believe is your intuition, your intuitive side. And see whether you get an answer or not. It could be as simple as, what should I do today? Be aware of what first comes into your head. It could be very practical. You need to do this and this and this. Or it could be a surprise. You may hear, oh, you need to go and visit, you need to go and visit your friend Mary. And you wonder why, but you think, I just heard that when I was in a more quiet and open space than I usually am. So maybe I should follow up on that. So you pose a question, you see if you get any answer. You may or you may not get an answer. And then based on what comes to you, you decide on whether to act on it or not. So those are the first 3 steps. Prepare yourself, become open, listen, see what's available to you in that moment, and then ask and see what comes to you. And the more you involve yourself in that sort of dialogue with yourself and with your surroundings, the more rapidly your intuitive voice is going to come through to you. The thing about intuition is that we all have it, and we all can say, oh yeah, I just had this hunch, I had this feeling. And sometimes it's about very, very simple and normal daily lives, things in our daily lives. And sometimes it's because there's something of great urgency that we really need to pay attention to. And often it's in those states of great urgency that we really hear what we need to hear.
That was a great little course. I have a few questions for you, of course.
Sure.
When in science, when I work in a hospital, for example, in a laboratory, we send blood to the lab because we want some calculations and everything else. When the lab starts their work in the morning, they always calibrate their instruments to make sure that they are right in tune. We do this with MRI scanners. We do this with everything. How do you calibrate intuition to make sure that it's going to be accurate and that it's not going to be involved in judgment or prejudice or belief systems or things like that? When you're talking about healing, I mean, if it's about, where do I want to go today or what movie do I want to see, that's one thing. But when we're going to use this in terms of healing, can we calibrate? Can we eliminate personal prejudice?
The question about calibration, Glenn, is incredible. And because with intuition, it's more a matter of practice. As I was explaining, we practice the dialogue with our intuition. We practice opening to what intuition can tell us, and then receiving the information, and then working with it and using it. And we show ourselves what is true and real and good and loving information, as opposed to what is not, by the outcome of what happens when we act on that intuitive information. So it's not a calibration; it's an opening. It's, as I said in the beginning, it's an opening of the heart in a way. It's the way we reciprocate existence with our higher selves and with the all that is.
Interesting. No, I like that. We just have to. We can't always have what we want.
Not for pure scientists, no. And I'm not trying to say that you're a pure scientist, because I know that you're not.
No, I get that, but no, that was a good answer. I like that, and the practice, and even our wizard behind the scenes agrees with that. So it must be real.
It must be.
Yeah. We want to talk so much more about this, but I also want to talk a little bit for a moment about your counseling.
Okay. Thank you. It's funny. I'm still looking for a good term for that, for counseling, therapy. I don't know what it is, but I can tell you that what I do is help people find the source of the dialogue between themselves and everything else around them. And what I mean by that is that they find inside, by looking inside at the things that they call a problem or an inadequacy. They find a way to hear from within themselves, through my direction, where that problem, in quotes, occurred, how it came to be there, how it is that it's locked into and interrelated to how they function in their lives now. So I work with children and families and adults and couples, and so easily take them to a place where the miasm, or what feels like a miasma around them, isn't oppressing them anymore. Often the reason that we think we're having a problem with somebody or with ourselves, or we're overcome by fear or sadness or stress, it's only because we don't know that we've imposed those things on our beautiful, intuitive, effervescent beings. So it's really working with each other to locate what wants to come free, and to demonstrate that our essence really is free. It's free to live. It's free to love. It's free to have. It's free to be. Yeah.
Very nice. As a medical guide, I have to a lot of times guide people, just like you do, on different paths. And in our show on Magical Medical Tour, we've talked with positive psychologists, we've talked with hypnosis therapists, past life regression therapists, a number of other types of healers. How does one make the decision to go to a past life regression therapist, a positive psychology coach, a hypnotist, or an intuitive?
You're going to laugh. Intuitively.
Boy, did I set myself up for that.
I'll explain. We usually have a feeling that that's the thing for us, or we hear about a particular practitioner, or we talk to someone who just went to see somebody, or we see a notice or a card somewhere, and we just say, oh, I'm going to try that. That feels right. So that's part of it, and that is really our intuition informing us to go out and try something. And the other thing is that we shift and we change all the time. We aren't always ready to have something become open or something become revealed. We aren't always ready to release parts of ourselves that we're really familiar with, that are making a mess of our lives just because of their influence and our belief in that influence. So we shift, we change. The atmosphere around us is constantly flowing and constantly moving. There are always new opportunities and different things coming in front of us for us to take a hold of or to ignore. And it really is just going with what feels right, going with the flow.
There you go with flow again. It's amazing how many words you use in that metaphor, diving into something, flowing, floating, all of that. Christina, any thoughts, any questions? We're coming near the end. We want to get a health tip in, and I have one more question for Anatara, but anything you want to ask?
No, I know. Anatara, we play so much on her show and on
Sure.
Trinity of Life. So we're kind of sisters of that realm.
That's true. All right, so then
I
I'm
want to
going
hear
right
your
on.
questions.
Okay. Well, now I've even forgotten the question. Oh yeah, now I remember the question. Anatara, when you were preparing for this show, is there anything that we have not discussed that you want to make sure that people know and impart to them before we get to your health tip? Anything that we've left out that you really want to be brought into this conversation?
Sure. Many things, but I'll try to keep it short.
I knew that.
How intuitive of you. The most important thing that I feel that we as a people in general forget is that we are not alone. We're not alone in this life. We're not alone in this world. We're not alone in this universe. We're not alone in our bodies. And I don't mean that we're not alone in terms of having other people or society or the fast, quickly moving world around us. I mean that in our essence, we are one with absolutely everything else. I can never separate myself from the earth that provides sunlight and water and life. I can never separate myself from the essences of each and every one of you. I can never separate myself from wherever it is that I'm standing, and I don't want to. If we understand that in essence form, we are all flowing and breathing in exactly the same energetic signals and inferences from the spaces around us. If we believe that even if we feel sad, that there is a whole infinite existence of beings out there functioning with us, working with us, helping us, showing us, learning from us, then this sense of loneliness and separation that we all have can't be as big as it is for many of us, and in most of our lives, for most of us sometimes. So you're not alone. You are never alone. You don't have to figure this out all by yourself. Work with your intuition, work with the people that present themselves to you, work with the things that you don't like, and find a way to feel and to live in that oneness.
Very nice. It almost sounds like it's your health tip, but I'm sure that we're going to get something great from you. We're speaking with Anatara about health and intuition. Anatara, our life awareness counselor and master intuitive. Would you share a health tip with us?
Sure. My health tip is that your body is brilliant. And Christina and I did a show about this in one of my Flowing into Awareness shows, so you can look for it if you want to. But the body is brilliant. As the spiritual, mental, physical beings that we are, many things are expressed, the final expression is through the physical. So when your body shows you something, when it shows you that it's in pain, when it shows you that it's itchy, when it shows you that it's heavier than you want or skinnier than you want, listen to what it has to say. Use those steps that I gave you to listen to what your body can tell you. Your body knows what you need. It knows what you need on all levels. You can work and be with your body and heal almost anything.
Very nice. I'm grateful to our very special guest, Anatara, for sharing her wisdom with us and her experience. I would like to thank all of my teachers and all of my healers to allow me to be on my journey today. And I would like to thank Christina Segovia and all of Yoga Hub for Magical Medical Tour and Trinity and Flowing into Awareness and all of the other shows that are going to be coming online very soon. Look forward to meeting with all of you again in another week as we search another quadrant of the healthcare galaxy. Thank you so much, Anatara, for sharing with us. And until next week, I wish you all optimal health.
Yay. Thank you so much, Anatara. It's blessing to have you grace our shows.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And of course, thank you, Dr. Glenn Woolman, for being a great host and those wonderful questions. And to each and every one of you for joining us in this new platform of education and information. We're always grateful for your continuous support, and we look forward to hearing your feedback on how we can serve you better. You can connect with Dr. Glenn Woolman by following him through his website at glennwoolman.com, where we encourage you to learn about his Metaphor Square Breath. And also to connect with Anatara at anatara.ca. Anatara.ca. We also invite you to check out her 6-part series here on Shop Yoga Hub called The Inner Tutor. The Inner Tutor. This is a 6-part course on developing your intuition. So we invite you to join us for that and also connect with her. And of course, we are always grateful for your feedback. You can post a question at the bottom of the site there, or give us a call at 818-LETS-TALK, 818-LETS-TALK, and we will be sure to get back to you. Until next time, namaste.